Bam, 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 bam.
It works.
That's
We
what I
still don't
call a
have our
cold
video
open.
open, so we'll just let Joel do his thing, and that'll be our open to
I,
the show.
I am the. I figured you haven't seen us in a couple of weeks. I'm going to come in being as obnoxious as ever. That's what I do, and I'm very good at it.
What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Snipe Celly. My name is Dan Bradley. Alongside me tonight, the music man Joel Fernino. Joel, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I am good. We're back.
We are back. It has
How was your honeymoon?
it was a lot of fun. It was um, for me the first time that I've been outside the U.S., which was
Oh,
a
yeah,
really
that's right.
interesting
You've never left the
experience.
country. I forgot that.
I have still not adjusted going back from Parisian time to Eastern time. So I am finding myself massively tired at like 8:30 and wide awake at like 5 a.m., which if you know me at all, that is not the hours that I normally like to function as a human.
Nope.
Normally I go to bed around midnight, wake up around 8. So it's still taking some adjusting to get back to that, but um, covered, no joke, about 1,000 years of history in about 6 days with just the different places that we went to. We went to the beaches at Normandy, which was
That's incredible.
that was a powerful experience. We had at the American cemetery that is just up the hill from the beaches. They have a ceremony each day, like a wreath laying ceremony to honor a fallen soldier. And so they'll rotate through. Every day there's somebody new, and some days it's somebody whose name they knew and were able to identify, and other days it's ones that they weren't. But the day that we went, they actually picked someone from our cruise to help lay the wreath as well. And that person was a firefighter who was a first responder with the New York Fire Department on 9/11.
Hmm.
So, not a dry eye in sight, partially because it was absolutely pounding rain that day as well. But it was amazing. It was raining on and off throughout our time there. And then when they played the national anthem right before the wreath laying and moment of silence. And during the anthem, it rained harder than I think I've ever stood in the rain before, which was kind of poetic in a way. But we did that. We saw Richard the Lionheart's castle, the remains of the ruins. We went to the Monet Foundation gallery and like Monet's house, which was super cool.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was awesome. All sorts of fun stuff. Met a lot of cool people on the cruise as well, and ate so many croissants. My God,
Croissant.
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 We had I conservative guess for how many croissants I ate, probably 50. They just had them on the ship that you could just like get pretty much whenever.
That's it. Those are rookie numbers. You got to bump those numbers up.
Okay, but there were also like other pastries and whatnot I had, like croissants specifically.
You are in France. Eat
50
a
and,
croissant.
50 in 8 days? That's an average of more than 6 a day?
That's rookie numbers. You got to bump those up.
This guy.
Just saying. You're in France, man. What else is there to
like
eat
I said,
there other than
conservative guess
snails?
too. So it probably was more than that. That's just the best number I can throw out off the top of my head.
Did you eat escargot?
Yes, I did actually. I tried escargot for the first time.
How was it?
It was surprisingly good. I did not think I would end up liking it as much as I would. It kind of had the consistency of a scallop with the flavor profile of like a portobello mushroom. So, yeah, that was an interesting taste profile. But
I mean, I make fun of it, but I would totally eat it.
We figured we would try as much different food as we can. So Michelle and I rarely had, like, we didn't order the same deal for the most part.
Did you order French fries?
At one point there were, so I thought at one night I ended up having steak for dinner. and I thought they were going to have like a mashed potato, but they ended up serving it with like steak frites, so the big, thick cut
the big ones,
French fries. So I had those.
It's kind of cool.
So I had French fries and French toast while in France. So
as you should.
Yeah.
Did you smoke a cigarette from a really long plastic thing?
I did not do that.
No. Damn. What else is there?
But like you don't realize how much like smoking is part of their culture. Like,
I know. Yeah. No, I know. I've heard. I have heard.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. Glad to be back.
Welcome back.
But did not necessarily want to come back from that type of trip. I mean, you want to stay on the ship and keep seeing things. And I could have spent days at each of the places that we went to and still not even soaked everything in and really enjoyed and appreciated it. So chance to go back, I would absolutely do it.
I still have a bucket list item to do a pub crawl in the streets of Dublin.
Yeah, that's on the list at some point.
Yeah. But Dan, we're bullshitting because look, we're in the off season, man. And really there is absolutely nothing going on.
Well, there was a big move involving a particular offensive defenseman the other day when Matt Dumba signed with the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. He didn't come to his rightful home, but that's okay. It's okay.
And if that wasn't enough offensive defenseman action for you, we have the Erik Karlsson trade, which
that's obviously the only big thing that happened. Yeah. Really, I mean, yes, Matt Dumba, but it wasn't surprising though because it was always down to the Penguins or who else was on the bill there. It was Penguins or
there was some very, very loose talk of Toronto being in the mix. There was talk of
I mean the only smoke was Pittsburgh and who else?
I can't even remember.
Was it going back to Ottawa perhaps?
No, I don't think that was it.
It wasn't re-signing in San Jose. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Carolina. That's what it was.
Oh, okay. Because it was the reuniting him with Burns in Carolina.
Yeah. That was the only true there was fire where there was smoke clearly, and then every other team was just total speculation. So and the Penguins were the front runners anyway when we started hearing all of that, and when the actual smoke really started to gain there, I was like, okay, it's a big trade, but that's kind of what we expected.
Mateo chiming in to say Toronto while Dubas was still the GM. Yeah, there are reports coming out today that Dubas was like, I was trying to do this while I was still with my previous employer, I think is how he described it.
Wow.
So
some underlying pettiness.
He's wanted Karlsson for a while.
Right. I mean, what does that mean for Pittsburgh? We could chat about that very quickly.
It means if they really wanted to, they could trot out a power play of Jake Gensel, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and Erik Karlsson.
It's pretty dangerous.
That's a power play that's going to score 50% of the time or better when they're all on the ice.
A Pittsburgh team that is kind of floating in the wind outside of this trade could make the playoffs if they were on the power play the whole season.
Yeah, don't take, not that this wasn't already something, but don't take penalties against Pittsburgh.
No, that's the only team to not take penalties against worse than that is Edmonton. That's it. But I mean, I don't know. I still think they're floating in the wind. Erik Karlsson's an awesome get. I'm sure Penguins fans are pumped, but I still don't see it making too much of a difference for them.
Yeah, I kind of have some mixed thoughts about it. It seems to me like it's a move that it's keep the window open for maybe 1 or 2 more years, but long run, it's really not going to do. Years 3 and 4 of that contract could be rough. But if you win a cup in the next 2 years, worth it.
I don't think they can. Not the way they're constructed.
Not as they're currently constructed and not with how so good the rest of the Eastern Conference is. I don't see it.
Right.
But he certainly gives them a better chance than a lot of the players who were there. And then they did also get out from under a couple of bad contracts as well.
Yeah, I saw something about how like they ended up, even though they took on that massive Carlson contract, they actually still ended up clearing like $3.1 million of cap space.
They cleared just over $3 million in cap space, and their team got younger somehow.
Right, which is hilarious. Amazing. So like, hey, good on Dubas. You know, he's doing work. He's at a place though. He's at an organization that's not gonna, you know, try to play puppet master with him.
Right, gonna kind of let him do his own thing, and
he can have a voice. He can do his damn job. I know he's not the GM per se, but still, like their top six while old is still elite, of course, as long as they can pair the two offensive guys with proper defensive defensemen. But I mean, yeah, I agree, and they didn't have to. Who?
Yeah, they didn't have to.
I know Brandon Yeager, but
yeah, Owen Pickering, another one of their top prospects in their organization.
Yeah, I was like, I know.
Yeah, that they did that, and they only had to give up one first-round pick.
That part was kind of crazy too. Like I expected it to be like, it was a blockbuster deal. Don't get me wrong, but I was like expecting this crazy return. I mean, his contract is terrible, so like I get it.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes for the last couple of years of the deal, but yeah, interesting move, and of course one that we were kind of sitting on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take 30 seconds, though, man. 30 seconds as well to toot my own horn here for a minute. And remind you that at this time in particular, in our last show before the honeymoon break, the trip to France, we were trying to figure out, would Philip Gustafson re-sign before I got back, or would it end up going to arbitration? He did get his deal done, and while I said it was just before I got back. But we also, on the show, we were trying to figure out the term of the deal and the value of the deal. And I had set a 2-year deal at $3.75 million.
That's exactly what it was, right? Or is it 3.85?
He came in at 3 years and 3.75. So I had the AAV right.
They gave him an extra year.
They gave him the extra year, which I cannot complain at all about. Getting a third year for what I thought was the fair price for 2 years. I'll take that one any day.
Matt's got a good point here. It did kind of misplace my mind a little bit. Stunned I'm not going off about Frankie Nazer's return to form with a 4-goal game at the Summer Showcase. Yeah. And actually, he followed that 4-goal game up with another 2-goal game, if I'm not mistaken.
He's going to be
whatever it was. Or no. Whatever it was. Like, I know there was another game after that, and he ended up putting up like another 2 goals or something like that.
Yeah.
He's going to be a problem. Not just for everyone facing off against. He's going to Michigan, right?
Well, and he gives the flexibility of Michigan, and if they do eventually decide to move, say Connor Bedard or Oliver Moore to the wing. Because like you want all three of those guys ideally playing in your top 6. So somebody's going to end up moving to the wing out of that group.
I believe it or not, if I had to just like gun to my head say which one of those 3, it'd probably be Bedard.
Yeah, I believe it.
I mean, because it's like, okay, whatever. Like, I haven't heard much about his face-off game. I think that's like one of the only spots that's not weak per se, but it's not anything special either. So like, whatever.
Yeah, it could go either way.
But yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, if that wasn't the case though, that would be that we even through the cup years, let's say they didn't do that and all like Moore turns out to be what he's supposed to be. Nazer turns out to be what he's supposed to be. And then obviously Bedard lives up to his hype. But they all stay at center and they just do that instead of trying to fit all 3 of them in the top 6. That will be the deepest I have ever seen our center core, even including the cup years. Yes. Even then, that was always the issue. Every single year other than 2010, we had to go out and get a second line center at the trade deadline. We did. It worked out, but still.
Let's get into our main show
well, you got
topic.
to introduce it. It's an off-season fun topic.
Yeah, I was just about to.
Be more exciting, man.
I am excited. I'm just trying to
wake your ass up.
Trying to move
you were
on
just
to things
on a
here.
2-week vacation.
It was a vacation, but we had so much going on. It was not a relaxing vacation at all the hiking around that we were doing and whatnot. Okay. But we decided to have a little off-season fun with this show. And I saw this one going around on Twitter about a couple weeks ago. And it was putting together teams based on the first letter of your first name. And the way that this was phrased was your first name matches their last name. So, for example, Joel with your first name, guys with your last name, you could get any Johnson, you could get Yager, you could go a ton of different ways for me, like Marcel Dion, Chris Draper, like throw whoever out you want.
Matt Dumba.
Yeah, could have done that. But I thought, that's been done before. That's almost too easy to do. Let's try and really make a challenge out of it and match the first letter of our first name to the first letter of their first name.
And I totally agreed the minute you pitched it, because I think I had asked at first I was like, wait, does it have to be both?
Yeah, because if we're coming up with guys with initials JF and DB, we're going to end up with some really.
Hold on. Let's take 30 seconds and try and just do one player.
I have one player I can think of off the top of my head, and that's because he made the roster that I have. Like he's on that team.
Actually,
two.
I don't think I have any JFs off the top of my mind that actually made it. That's the whole thing about how we constructed these lineups too. This is all-time players, but we also threw in our own flavor. You'll hear names that I left out of my lineup, or that names that went into we did a couple honorable mentions. But you'll hear names where it's why didn't you have them in your starting lineup? Or what the hell? You don't even have them in your list at all. And it's well, there's only so many players we could go with. We just went with a regular roster and we threw some flavor in there. I got a couple players where I'm I just really love this player. I've loved watching this player. And he beat out, some legend that's top 20 on the all-time scoring list at that, whatever it was. Joel Farabee. Thank you.
Same first name even.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't even. And he's actually a decent player too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so once we have, we'll go through both of our teams here, and we will put up a poll on Twitter for everybody to go vote who has the better team, and we'll showcase as well. But we're going to go through line by line. Joel, I want to start with your team. Your first forward group, really an intriguing one to me.
So wait, tell everybody too.
Yeah,
tell everybody too. We stayed pretty strict to position.
Yeah,
I didn't really care about what handedness they were or anything, but we did stick to if you Google this player right now and he is listed as a left wing, you have to put him on the left wing. You can't be putting him on the right wing. There was no
can't move a center to the wing.
Yeah, because there was plenty of hell. You'll see on my list, he's in my honorable mentions. There is a center that technically played a lot of wing at times, but he was listed as a center, so I had to put him as a center. So that's the other nuance here. But yeah, I agree. Right. I love my top line. I'm not going to lie to you.
I like a lot of what you did in putting together your roster. There's a couple things that I questioned on, but but it's your team. I'm not going to tell you how to run your team.
That's going to be the whole theme of this. It's anytime you see the Sports Center lists, it's this is my list. If you got a problem with it, go make your own list.
Yeah, exactly. And start your own podcast and debate us, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
But jumping in on this forward unit, this is a line that I think just one of the most intriguing lines, the way that you put it together, in the sense that anybody on that line could be the scorer at a given time. Anybody could be the setup person at a given time. And you could probably have any of them battling in front of the net at any given time. You went with a forward group.
Yep.
I'll let you read it off.
Yeah. So my top line for my names on left wing, we got Jamie Benn. At center, of course, Joe Sakic. And then on the right wing, we got Yari Curry.
That would be such a fun. This is almost like when you're playing Hockey Ultimate Team on Shell.
Yep.
And you get some of the current greats and the throwback players. This was just a fun.
By the way, too, these are all like we drafted these players drafted in their primes.
Yes.
So it's not, so you'll see a name where it's like, what? Like that guy's career fell off, or that guy's career isn't exactly said and done yet. Right. It's all in their prime.
I see that comment. I like it. I'm not going to get ahead of things here, but wanted to just just we did see that.
Yes.
We're gonna wait. We'll get through it.
We won't showcase it, but Matt, you're on the right track there. So that was my first forward line. I mean, Joe Sakic as my first line center that was the first name that popped into my head. I'm just like, who? Okay, Joe Sakic. What the hell? Like, of course. And then actually, believe it or not, Yari Curry was the second name that popped into my head.
Yeah, and getting those two unaligned together, that's, I think, where a bulk of your scoring production is coming from. But Jamie Benn to be your net front presence on that line and to be, not necessarily an enforcer, but at least an agitator and kind of
like we said, they're in their prime. So he is one hell of a, not just goal scorer, he is one hell of a point scorer machine.
Yeah.
So like that's the whole thing. He can set it up and everything. Now, we'll try not to, like, for the older guys, we might give you some stats and maybe where they rank and stuff, but we're not going to like waste a bunch of time. Like, all these names. If you don't know these names, well,
yeah. If there are names that aren't as commonly known,
sure,
we'll give you some details on them. But we would think most hockey fans probably going to know those names.
My favorite, I'll give like little fun facts. My favorite thing I've ever heard about Joe Sakic was just the obvious respect he had around the league. But have you ever heard the mini story? I can't remember who was getting interviewed. There's something on the NHL Network, and I don't remember who they were actually interviewing. I think it might have been. I don't know. I don't remember who was getting interviewed, but they were talking about Sean Avery. And obviously, if you don't know Sean Avery, he's King Rat. He was a rat before it was cool to be a rat.
Yep.
And he was probably the GOAT at chirping. I would probably say. Yeah.
Definitely. He had a motor mouth.
Yeah. And so actually, maybe it was Brett Hull. I think it was Brett Hull.
This is the story I think you're going to tell. It's Brett Hull.
It was Brett Hull because Sean Avery was either a rookie or a second year. He was a young player, though. And known for chirping, known for fighting, whatever. And they were playing the Avs. And this is at the time when the Avs are dominating and, they're winning their cups with Joe Sakic. And what happened was Sean Avery goes to like the face-off, comes in front of the bench, and Sean Avery, goes to chirp Joe Sakic like, "Hey, Sakic!" And Brett Hull just pushes him down to the bench and says, "No, you do not talk to Mr. Sakic.
Yep, you do not get to talk to Mr. Sakic."
This is Brett Hull, who is another all-timer Hall of Famer. Just like, no, he doesn't even say his first name. Just you do not talk. You don't speak to Mr. Sakic.
There are a few players on your list who have been just absolute wild killers, and even going back a ways, North Stars killers. Yeah. But especially a couple of wild killers on this list, Sakic being one of them. But as someone who had to grow up hating the Avalanche because of the rivalry, there are a few opponents that you respected more than Joe Sakic. Like, he is just on that elite list of universally respected players. Like even Red Wings, going back to the hate of that rivalry, the Red Wings Avalanche rivalry. Red Wings fans I know will still say, like, I hate everybody that ever played for the Avalanche except Joe Sakic. Yep.
And I mean, I know I'm spending all the time on him. Yari Curry, obviously, another just absolute legend.
The main beneficiary of Gretzky's greatness.
Exactly. Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, I was a fan of my first line.
That's a good one.
It seemed like a pretty chill first line.
Your second line is pretty fascinating here too.
Yep. So left wing. So here's the thing. You'll notice that left wingers, as it comes to like in history, there wasn't that many like all timer like older players. So left
No, they're
winger,
mostly centers or right wings.
exactly. So left wing, my second line, we got Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, I love watching him play to this day. So that was easy. My second center is the absolutely notoriously legendary Jean Beliveau, who won whatever it was, like 80 cups, whatever it is now.
Yeah, I think it was
like 16, I think.
10 as a
Or
player
10.
and 7 as an exec.
Actually, I have it up right now. I will tell you.
I do too.
Yeah. 1, 2,
21-year career.
Yeah, 10 as a player. Yeah, there you go.
13-time All-Star.
Yep.
Conn Smythe winner, Art Ross winner.
Lifetime
and, by the way,
award.
by the way, the second leading scorer in the history of the league is on your second.
On my right wing at the absolute unit that is Jaromir Jagr.
Mateo with an interesting question here. Does John Tavares count as a left winger now?
Well, I'm going to give you a spoiler right now. John Tavares is not on my list.
Yeah, I think we've still had him listed as a center because that is where he's played the majority of his career.
Yeah.
But when you look at the center depth on that list, like respectfully, Tavares was not going to make the centers cut with the centers that you have on your list.
Nothing against him. He didn't even make honorable mentions. But again, nothing against him. We kept it limited. So, yeah. So, I mean, easy to talk. Like Johnny Gaudreau's hockey career is still very much being written, but he's already an absolute superstar. Like that was pretty easy from the J side. John Beliveau, we just talked about him, and then Jagr, literally second all time in scoring. So,
rumors of Jagr coming back to the NHL. I don't buy into him, but there are rumors that he.
How old is he now? He's
51.
51. There we go. Okay. 1,733 games played. I mean, 1,921 points. I mean, he if he comes back for 2 seasons and puts up 240-point seasons,
there's no way that man has 2 NHL seasons in him. You put him on a line with.
If there's anyone I'm gonna not bet against coming back in their 50s and doing it at this day and age, obviously we know Gordie Howe did it in his 50s. That was a different time, but the whole thing is it was a different time. The game arguably is less rough nowadays.
It's less rough, but it's so much faster.
Right.
But across the board. And just not being able to keep up with the speed element. Jagr looked slow when he was still with Florida a few years ago. He can't have gotten any faster in that time.
No. All right, let's move on to my third line. Third forward line. At left wing, the budding superstar in the making, Jason Robertson. And, of course, at center, did you not think I was going to not pick Jonathan Toews? One of the best captains to ever grace the NHL. First ballot Hall of Famer. And then on the right wing, one of Dan's favorites, Jarome Iginla.
I have such a love-hate. I hate that I love Jarome Iginla.
I know.
And it's the same with Sakic, where
it was like half hate. It was like a half sarcastic thing, your favorite, but also not sarcastic.
Yeah, he's such a good player, and he always killed the Wild. He could be on like a 30-game goalless drought, and he would score a hat trick against the Wild.
Oh yeah,
just every time. It was him and Mika Kiprasov were the bane of my hockey fandom growing up. Because anytime we played Calgary, those two would show up and show out.
Yeah, Jarome Iginla was. I mean, realistically, he was like one of the first like legends that my eye caught when I started watching hockey back in whatever it was 08 or whatever. Like he was one of the first big names that caught my eye. Obviously Jagr was still playing. You got plenty of the younger guys like Crosby's and stuff like that. But like the veterans in the league that like I knew, I was like, oh, Jarome Iginla and the Calgary Flames, like that dude's insane, like that's as a kid, and then eventually it just became like, no, he's an absolutely Hall of Famer. Like it's, wow. My OCD loves that. He finished with 1,300 points exactly.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that for him.
And then fourth line of forwards here.
Fourth line. Left wing, I know you're going to like this. Jason Zucker. So Dan knows, well, let me go through it. And then my fourth line center, Jeremy Roenick, another Blackhawks legend, but a legend, a U.S. hockey legend. So, and then on the right wing, just one of my personal current favorites that isn't a Hawk, Jonathan Marchessault. Jonathan Marchessault, like I said, all these names are going to have kind of different reasons why you pick this name over this name. Like Jason Zucker was a name that I loved even on the Wild. He played the Hawks well in the playoff series we played against you in the regular season. He always played the Hawks well, but I always just loved it. He was your Brandon Saad. He was a workhorse. That dude didn't know how to give up. Yeah, he didn't know how to give up. And at the same time, he actually was good, and he was a damn good scorer. He could put up clutch goals, give you clutch assists, give you all this ice time. He was scrappy at times. Like that, I always loved watching Jason Zucker. I still like watching Jason Zucker. Like I root for him on any team he's on.
I'm going to be so happy that he and Dumba are reunited in Arizona next season, because those are two of like my favorite Wild guys. Just people on and off the ice, good players, good people.
Potatoes on it. He could burn right past you. Exactly.
Yeah.
He had sneaky speed.
But before, because he had I think it was a leg injury at some point, maybe like a groin or quad, something like that.
Yeah.
But he could fly up and down the ice. I would have loved to see him going out for like a fastest skater type of competition.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't have the numbers to go to the All-Star game, especially when Parise and Suter were still on the team, and Koivu. They'd go to the goalie, and then they would go with Devin Dubnyk. Like, Zucker wasn't going to make an All-Star game representing the Wild, but if he did, that would have been fun to see. Plus, Marchessault, like, coming off a heater of a playoff run with Vegas here, too.
That's the thing, too, though. It's been consistent. Like, yes, they finally made it over the hump. They finally clinched and won that cup, and he played a massive part in it. But he played a massive part in all of their deep playoff runs since the inaugural season of the Golden Knights. Every playoffs, he's always consistent. He became this consistent, like, he was given up, Florida gave up on him, and we all knew his name. I remember knowing Jonathan Marchessault, like, oh yeah, like, he is whatever, he's there. He's a guy. He's a guy. And then he goes to Vegas and becomes the guy.
I remember playing NHL 14 back in the day and always trying to target him in every draft because I knew how well he developed in the drafts. And then sure enough, like, that's all he's done is just be even better than the type of player that we thought he was going to be. 72 points in 95 career playoff games.
There you go. See, it's consistent playoff performer. It's fun. And like, some people will be like, well, wait, like, Jeremy Roenick is a Hawks legend, just like Taves. Taves, in my opinion, is more of a legend because he got the cups and led us to the cups. Why'd you put him on your fourth line? Well, if you notice, my fourth line isn't only a bunch of superstars, but they're scrappy superstars. That's what a fourth line would look like on this.
And a fast fourth line at that. That line has some wheels.
I didn't know. I know Roenick destroyed the beginning of the 90s, but he had a three-peat of 100-plus point seasons, 103, 107, 107 from 91 to 94. Like, he was – leave it to the Blackhawk fan to judge another fan base for giving up on a player early. Wait, what? Oh. Hey, wait. What? What do you mean? Hold on. No, we're going to visit this. Who did we give up on early? I'm waiting for you to stop chugging.
Well, you could make an argument for Teravainen. You could make an argument for Panarin. You could make an argument for Saad, shipping him off to Columbus before bringing him back. Artemi Panarin.
That is not our fault. That is he who shall not be named GM's fault.
I'm just saying.
That's not.
I was just saying. Organization gave up.
He's not even the organization. That was a Stan Bowman. Yeah, I named him. He shall not be named. That was a Stan Bowman fuck up. Now you got me heated. Let's move on to my defensive lines.
Let's go to your forward honorable mentions first. Let's do that.
Right.
In your defense here, but forward honorable mentions.
Yep. So the honorable mentions on the forward side, Jack Eichel, of course. You'll see how center depth, or how they're all centers. So Jack Eichel barely missed the cut. I actually almost put him in, but I was like, I can't leave out Jean Beliveau. That's disrespectful.
We would have. Well, you and I already thought about Joe Thornton.
Yeah, so Joe Thornton is in my honorable mentions. So for that, to me, I mean, I respect Joe Thornton. He's what number is he on the all-time scoring list now? Is he like
12?
12, yeah. So yeah.
He's near the top. He's either 12th or 9th. I can't remember. I texted it to you earlier today.
Always, I never had anything against him. Him and Taves always had a nice little rivalry going, and Taves would still fight him, even though obviously he ain't going to win that fight. But he ended up not making the cut because I'm not about to ditch Jonathan Taves or Jeremy Roenick for Joe Thornton. Joe Pavelski, he actually was up there. He was in my lineup for a minute. And then again, like I said, it just felt wrong leaving John Beliveau out. So Joe Pavelski got to the honorable mentions. And I've loved Joe Pavelski since he was, since I started watching hockey. It was actually tough for me to leave Joe Pavelski off the actual lineup. Mm-hmm. And then Jeff Carter. You were talking about those players you love to hate, or a love-hate relationship. That's me and Jeff Carter, because I loved watching him. He was always so good, but he played us in the playoffs very well. And obviously in 2014, it did not end up well for us in that sense. So, so those are my forward honorable mentions. Now let's move on to the defense. So my D1 pairing, we have Jacques
hang on.
It's Jacques Laperriere.
This is what happens when I have to try and type things up just before the start of the show.
It's okay.
Psych, take two.
There we go. Jacques Laperriere.
Now the question is, did I have it right on the full screen graphic?
You should have.
I should have. Go ahead and. Yeah. Okay, good. I did have it right there.
You did. Yeah. So Jacques Laperriere, who I think was pretty actually, but every list I Googled, like, he's old time player there. I actually am pulling up his stuff right now. He was the best defenseman J name that I could find.
6 cups with the Montreal Canadiens, 5-time All-Star, Norris Trophy winner, Hockey Hall of Fame in 1987.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole thing here. Like, his playing career ended in 1974, so that's
like Chicago for 2 seconds here.
So it is what it is. Like, he's obviously a legend. I looked up where he was on the all-time scoring list. I think he might have been in like the
among defensemen, or
among defensemen. I think he was in like the top 30. I think.
You keep talking about your team. I'll look that one up for you.
Yeah. But yeah, and then obviously on the other side, the top D pairing was John Carlson. That was the first defenseman that came to mind when we started this. That was easy. I mean, John Carlson
that's a team that's just going to move the puck.
Exactly. I mean, he's arguably one of the. He's not even arguably. He is absolutely one of the top. I'm going to say 7 defensemen in the league. Still, so this was real easy. But defenseman was actually tough J names. Like the six you're going to see on my team,
mm-hmm.
and that was pretty much it. And then the 2 honorable mentions, and that was like pretty much it.
And I noticed, and this is just kind of, I guess, a little bit of a teaser for my team as well, is that your team had a bit more of the modern game.
Oh yeah.
Whereas mine had some more of the old school names on the list, just the way things fell.
It was, and I think it was kind of a 50-50, like 50%. Like I just like the modern game more,
mm-hmm.
which makes sense. I didn't start watching until 08 or 07, 08, whatever. So I get that kind of makes sense. But then at the same time, there are not a lot of classic J names.
Mm-hmm.
First name, J names, obviously.
Right.
So we move on to my defensive pairing too. I'll start going a little quicker. Jacob Chikrin, and to Mateo's point, Jonas Brodin did in fact make my list.
Yeah, one of the
Jonas Brodin, sorry.
One of the premier shutdown defensemen in the game today.
Paired with one of
Connor McDavid does not put up a ton of points when he plays against the Wild. And when he does, it's because Jonas Brodin is not on the ice.
Exactly. So I have always been with you. Like, we'll argue till the day is long about specific Wild players where you're like, oh, they're better than this, whatever it is. I have never once argued with you about Jonas Brodin being a top. I remember you've always tried to say, like, oh, it's a hot take. He's a top 10 defenseman. I don't think it's a hot take. Now, do I agree that
it is depending who you ask?
But well, that's the whole thing, because now we're in the culture now where it's like, well, Jonas Brodin doesn't put up 80 points as a defenseman, so how can he be a top 10 defenseman? Well, that's not what the game is about.
How many guys do put up 80 points as a defenseman, by the way? Let's start with that.
That's the first thing. But even like 60 points, like, okay, well, guess what? Playing a defenseman is not just about scoring, and we could go on about that, but I won't waste our time because it's going to become a thing. But yeah, and then obviously the biggest saga we had this season was where's Jacob Chikrin getting traded, and he is definitely one of the better offensive defensemen we got going right now, and just in general defensemen, but more of the offensive upside there. And then the final D pairing of my team, Team J, is I had to put Jack Johnson in there.
I about fell out of my chair when I saw that you put Jack Johnson on your third D pairing. Because not only did you put him in, but you put him in over Jared Spurgeon and then left Jared Spurgeon off your honorable mentions.
Hey, man.
Like, you had the opportunity to not only have Spurgeon on your list, but to pair him with Brodin.
Blackhawks legend Jack Johnson.
And you opted for Jack Johnson. Like, I kind of want to kick you for that.
Blackhawks legend Jack Johnson, man.
This guy. Like I said, and like you had mentioned earlier in the show, this is putting together your team your way. If I'm putting that together, I'm going with Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin.
Hey, I'll tell you.
Pairing, but
Jared
your team
Spurgeon,
your way. You went with Johnson.
Jared Spurgeon was close, but hey, man, not everybody makes the cut.
Yeah, and that's part of the
I think for nothing else, it was more just irony. I was like, I got to put the JJ in there. and then Justin Falk being the other one there. Obviously, that's that right D there, third. Justin Falk mostly the offensive upside. But again, this is where I say, like, we were picking these players in their prime. So Justin Falk in his prime on Carolina. Oh yeah,
yeah.
Then I'll go quick honorable mentions.
Well, go to your goalies first, because I put the D and the goalie on the same slide.
Oh. All right, so we're on to goalies. And my starting goaltender is, of course, Jonathan Quick.
Yeah, that one wasn't too big of a surprise, because the guys that you came up with, there were 4 goaltenders right away that I went, these 4, and Joel is going to end up picking 3 of these 4. And sure enough, that's exactly what you did.
Who was the 4th?
John Gibson.
Yeah, so honestly, it was tough not even putting him on the honorable mentions. We only gave ourselves one, and I was like, nah. It was tough though. He was the first name I thought of in the goalies category, to be honest with you, but he ended up not even making the cut. And then of course my backup would be the legendary Jacques Plante. Which fun fact about Jacques Plante that I told you about, he was the first goalie to wear a mask.
He was 9th all time in goaltender wins, 19th in goals against average. Just numbers that stand the test of time, even beyond the era that you were playing. Of course, when you have all of the legendary Canadiens defensemen and goal scorers in front of you, that does make goaltending a little easier.
Why do you think he ended up getting the backup role?
Yeah, you still got to be able to win those games, even with the puck at the other end of the ice most of the time. You got to make the saves when they're there, and Plante did. And of course, I would hear an argument for having him as the starter on this list, but
it was kind of a 1A, 1B ultimately.
Yeah.
Based on my eye test alone, obviously neither of us were alive during Jacques Plante's time, but I've seen Jonathan Quick my entire hockey life,
Mm.
and him in his prime. I mean, yes,
Not only that, but you got to see him like against your team in
a
some of the
lot.
best playoff
Exactly.
battles. The
Yeah.
playoff series between Chicago and LA.
Yeah. I would argue one of the best goaltending head-to-head battles I've ever watched is a Corey Crawford versus a Jonathan Quick series. Like
Yeah.
it had no contest. But also, I mean, him in his prime,
Mm.
if not for his fall off, I think he could. If he didn't fall off the way he fell off, he could be in the discussion of one of the greatest of all time. But he
And
fell
I
off.
still
So.
think there's a shot he could be a Hall of Famer.
I think he should be. He should
Like,
absolutely
I
be a
think
Hall
he
of
should be
Famer.
as well. I think because not only do you take the cups and like, yes, he had a shorter like prime compared to some of the other goaltenders who are in the Hall.
But what he did in that
But
prime.
what he did in that prime, and nobody was beating him.
Not to mention like what he did in the Olympics. Like
Yep,
you got
and
all
that's the
this.
tipping point for me.
Exactly.
I think is when you look at the international accolades beyond the NHL accolades. It's the
And
Hockey Hall of Fame. It's not
he
the
had
NHL.
one of those. He did have himself a Conn Smythe too, and getting the Conn Smythe as a goalie doesn't happen very often.
No, and that's often a tipping point as well in those types of conversations. So yeah, Mateo saying he had some Olympic success. Yes.
All right. I took up a lot. I mean, about 15 or so minutes. I took up some time. Let me just really fast go through the honorable mentions. So my honorable mentions for D and goalie. So James Patrick and then Jeff Bookaboom were my defensemen.
What a name, Jeff Bookaboom.
Right? Why not put
one of my favorites?
Honorable mention. And then honorable mention, of course, is the up and coming, and well, he's already here. Let's be honest, Jake Ottinger.
He's so good already. Like, I think he's already a top 5 goaltender in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he keeps it going this year, he'll be a top 3.
Yeah,
easily. So I'll toss up my thing real quick so everyone watching can.
Yep. So just to recap your full lines here.
This is the picture you'll get to vote on our Twitter poll of who had the better team. So that is my team J. Now let's move on to team D. Wait, is that that's a D?
Other way around. Because
it's
on the screen.
Yeah, it's reversed. So yeah, okay,
yep.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. But yeah, the team of players. Oh, yeah, up and coming Jesper Wallstedt didn't make the cut. Well, he's got to play an NHL game first.
You know what? Honestly, though, Mateo brings up a good point. I didn't even think about Jesper Wallstedt. I probably should have.
he could be on there. Yeah, we do this list again in 10 years or so. He may be on there.
Yeah, that's fair.
You gotta have enough time. So I, much like you, thought not only how do I, as I put this team together, pick the guys that I like. How do I balance that with players that I personally saw play? And not only that, but how do their styles of play kind of mesh together? And would these lines more or less work, for lack of a better way of putting it? I have zero doubt that this top line that I put together is going to score me a boatload of points. They represent number 31, number 21, and number 51 on the all-time points list. So 3 guys essentially in the top 50 in points, going Dave Andreychuk, Doug Gilmour, and Dino Ciccarelli for a top line. That is a brutal line to play against.
Yeah, that's a top line that's going to score a hell of a lot of goals on you, but it's also going to beat the shit out of you.
Yes, it is a very physical line, is a very difficult to play against line. Gilmour, a Selke winner up the middle. Dino Ciccarelli, just a pest on the ice to try and deal with.
Dino.
And then on top of all of that, you've still got Dave Andreychuk, who is second all time in power play goals behind Ovechkin, 7th most games played. Tampa Bay has a statue of him outside of Amalie Arena for helping lead him to the Cup in 2004. That's a fun top line to deal with. That's a pain in the butt top line to play against.
Yeah.
And they're scoring goals and they're not giving up goals, which that's why I thought this line makes so much sense to put everybody together here. Second line moving through, I went with Daniel Sedin, Dale Hawerchuk, and Daniel Alfredson. In Sedin, you get a guy who was just shy of 400 career goals, 3-time All-Star, an Art Ross winner in 2011, 78th all-time in points. Howard Chuck up the middle, the first NHL player to reach 1,000 career games before turning 31. He was a 5-time All-Star with 1,400 points. And then Daniel Alfredson, who third in points in the 2000s, behind two of the guys on your team with Jerome McGinley and one Joe Thornton as your number 2 and number 1 respectively for points in the 2000s. I think we forget about, as hockey fans, like just how good Alfredson was and how good Ottawa was in the mid 2000s. I wonder if that team, like if not for the lockout, if that team wins a cup in that run.
I mean, realistically, they should have won a cup in 2017.
There too, but Alfredson wasn't with them then. Looking just at that mid 2000s team.
Yeah, I mean, part of it only like Alfredson flew under the radar just because like Ottawa usually is that team that flies under the radar regardless of how they do. But like Alfredson was always incredible to watch.
Oh, and he was a 14-year captain of the Senators as well.
Yeah,
and the line of Heatley, Spezza, Alfredson, like. Yeah, that was just a dominant line in that era.
Oh, yeah. Jason Spezza did not make my cut.
Yeah, but
he was close.
Danny Heatley made my cut, so he is my third line.
Of course he
left
did.
wing. And I debated long and hard about putting Heatley and Alfredson on the same line again.
You should have.
I just couldn't do it. Like, I wanted to do it, but I thought Daniel was an even better fit for that line. Within a third line of Danny Heatley, Denny Savard, and Dave Taylor.
Savoir faire. The inventor
Heatley,
of the spinorama.
Denny Savard, the spinorama, trails only Hull and Makita in points with the Blackhawks. 9-time All-Star Cup winner. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure I've got a cup winner or multiple cup winner on every line. I think. Every line, and I think every D pair. I got to check that to be sure, but
I don't know if I can say the same.
I know you. Well, let's see.
Man, just go through your team. I'll look at mine.
Yeah, we'll look at them later.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I thought maybe your fourth line didn't until this year when Marchessault got one.
Also, that counts.
So that was the only one that I was like, wait, I had to see who was on that line.
Well, right. I was gonna say Roenick goes down as one of the best players to not win a cup.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then Dave Taylor, number 69 all-time in points. Nice. The lowest drafted player to break 1,000 career points. He was a 15th round draft pick. As I believe,
back when that existed.
Yeah, back when we had 15 rounds of draft. It ended up being like 210 overall, I think, is what the number was there. HP chiming in with the 50 and 07. Mateo is getting ahead of me a little bit here with how good the defensive group is going to be. Yeah, that I think is the big difference that'll stand out right away.
Oh yeah. There's a big difference.
There's a big difference on defense. It's Team D. It had to be defense.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So, and then just for fun, you mentioned the flair of putting some of your own personal favorites. As a hockey fan, I couldn't.
I know. I wasn't surprised
put Derek Bugard on that fourth line
whatsoever to see.
You look at the names on the rest of this team, and it's like, oh, you didn't have enough sandpaper. You didn't have enough guys who were going to just absolutely beat the bajonkers out of you. No, we're throwing Derek Bugard on there for good measure too, just to really get under your skin and make you go after somebody here. And we're going to put him on a line with Daryl Sittler, who holds a record for points in a game. He had a 10-point game.
The Boogeyman.
R.I.P. Boogeyman. Gone but not forgotten. We love us some Derek Bugard. Sittler, a captain with the Leafs and the Flyers. But yeah, 10 points in a game for Daryl Sittler. And then Dave Christian on this line as well. A gold medal winner with the 1980 Miracle on Ice team. He also holds the NHL record for the fastest first goal in his career. He scored 7 seconds into his first NHL shift.
Wow.
That is going to be a very, very tough record to break. Yeah, plus the vibes pick in Bugard. Yeah, I picked based on numbers and I picked based on vibes, and this team got both in spades. Tough to leave some of the forwards off this list. Unfortunately, had to, but leaving Doug Weight, Danny Briere, Dale Hunter, and David Krejci off that list, all guys who there's an argument to be made for putting all those guys in. Briere, one of the top playoff performers of all time, 116 points in 124 playoff games. Dale Hunter, the second most penalty minutes in NHL history with 3,565. Again, when talking about putting together a team that would be physically tough to play against, if there's a guy that, we have a matchup against Chicago and I need to put in, for a rivalry there, throw him in there, Dale Hunter. And then David Krejci as well, fifth most points among Czech-born players with 786. He's a cup champ, 1,000 games in the league. Just additional center depth, which, again, you look at the teams.
Oh, wow.
We both knew our guys there.
Mateo's got a point here. No pasta.
No pasta.
I didn't even think about that.
And again, there are some names who
there's
like, how do but as I look at that team, I mean,
I'm not saying
Dave Christian is maybe the only guy that I would consider, because it would have to be a wing or
I don't know
one of the honorable mentions.
I actually
don't. And I thought about that of like, man, is there a way I can put pasta in here? I had a really tough time with that one.
I got to tell you, I don't know who Dave Christian is.
He was, I just said he was part of the 1980 Miracle on Ice team.
Speaking of that, who I had on my list but didn't end up making the cut? JP Parise.
I thought you were going to say Jim Craig.
Oh, no!
Well, I mean, in fairness, the NHL careers, the guys you had
that's the whole thing.
Had better NHL careers. But during that run, during a miracle run in 1980, Jim Craig was the best goalie in the world for a hot stretch.
Yeah. All right. Here's where we.
Yep. And here's where I think the team starts to take a little bit of a turn in my favor here.
We're gonna
Dennis Potvin and Drew Doughty. And Joel, you and I mentioned as well, and I can't remember if we already brought this up in the show, but when we got to our defensemen, you just went with straight up names. And when I put together my defense, I went with guys who were left shots, played on the left side.
Oh, yeah. You
shots, played on the right.
You took way more of a coach view of it than I did, at least on the defensive side. I did it on the forward lines, but not on the defensive side.
Yeah, on the defensive side, I just wanted to make very sure, like, hey, if you're a left shot, you're on the left. If you're a right shot, you're on the right. Which, again, is going to be a point of controversy here in a minute as we get through the lines. But top pairing of Dennis Potvin and Drew Doughty, 6 cups combined between those two. Potvin, the captain for the Islanders during their 1980s Cup runs, and Drew Doughty, again, one of the top defensemen of the 2010s. Joel, somebody that you had to see your Hawks, one of the top defensemen of the 2010s. One of. If you haven't already been able to pick up on what Joel is getting at here.
But yes, no. I mean,
I'm going to make you say nice things about Drew Doughty here. And
I never hated Drew Doughty. You're right. Again, similar. That was like the Jeff Carter effect too for me. Like Drew Doughty was always fun as hell to watch because he was one of the best defensemen of the 2010s, and I mean, no denying that for a couple seasons he was absolutely the top defenseman. For a couple of those seasons in the 2010s, like there was no denying it. I mean, he was insane. This is an obvious top D pairing for you. This is obvious. And there's your DD.
Yeah,
there's a DD.
Had to get because you had a JJ pairing, so yeah. So it ended up working well. We should have made that a point when we put this together. Like we ended up doing it without making that a conscious thought. But second pairing. Doug Wilson and Dan Boyle on that second pairing. Doug Wilson is the Blackhawks all-time leader in defenseman goals and points. He was an 8-time All-Star.
Yep.
And I put him opposite Dan Boyle on this one. Boyle went from being an undrafted player to playing 1,000 games plus in the NHL, a cup winner, an Olympic gold medalist, 34th all-time in defenseman goals with 163. All that from a guy who was undrafted. That's the work ethic that you want from a hockey player, and the work ethic that you want when putting together a type of team like this. So for me, that was putting Boyle on that second pairing. And then on the third pairing, we moved to Doug Harvey and Dustin Byfuglien. Because again, like I said, like this team wasn't physical enough already.
You got to. Hey, look, we'll get to it. We'll argue on your next one because clearly everyone sees you are missing a very large part. Duncan Keith is not in your lineup.
He's in my honorable mentions.
I don't even care. You are wrong.
You can die mad about it. Doug Harvey, 7 Norris trophies.
Yeah, well, I'm not arguing that.
You can't argue that one. 7 Norris trophies. He kind of invented, or at the very least helped popularize the role of the puck-moving defenseman. He played in an era where a defenseman gets the puck and immediately just shoots it up the ice and tries to get rid of it. He was somebody who wanted the puck on his tape, control the play, set that standard. And Byfuglien just wrecks everything that moves.
Byfuglien smash.
Yeah.
I love Dustin Byfuglien so much. That was one of the bigger heartbreaks of the 2010 cap casualty shedding. By the way, Dan, or absolutely no one. Dan.
Sand. Yep. The thing is, I think this is a squad that can win in any era, but especially from about 1960, well, we'll go 67 from the expansion until about 95. This squad is going 82-0 every season in those eras.
Yeah, that's because they probably murdered half of the other team's roster.
Fair?
Or at the very least, concussed them and they left on a stretcher. But, hey, I'm with you. Dustin Byfuglien was amazing. But here's the thing. Just go to your freaking honorable mentions.
Well, I got to go to goalies first. But
oh, right, okay. This is easy.
Yeah, Dominic Hasek was the easiest pick. I had him before I put any forward on this list.
I mean,
in fact, I think he was the first player, period, on the list. My pick for who is the greatest goaltender of all time, I go Dominic Hasek. I take him over Brodeur. I take him over Patrick Waugh.
You will not hear any arguments here.
Yeah, to me, Dominic Hasek was the best goalie who has laced him up. And then Don Beaupre, who one of the top goaltenders of the 1980s. Shout out to my mom if she's watching. Beaupre was like my mom's favorite player when he was with the North Stars. But Beaupre, like he played on a lot of bad teams throughout his career, and similar to almost John Gibson-like, I think is a fair comparison where the individual play versus the numbers that are there. The numbers don't tell the full story of the impact that he had. He had the 4th most shots against and the 4th most saves of any goaltender in the 1980s. And he did that while being kind of in a tandem deployment. It wasn't like he was the guy who was starting 60 games and the other guy is starting 12. It was closer to a 50-50 split in some of those cases. So, but went with Beaupre there. And then now we will finally get to honorable mentions where you will notice that I did put Duncan Keith as the first honorable mention. I know you're mad.
You're just wrong.
Hold
on. The fact that he is not in your second or third D pairing over, yes, Dustin Byfuglien, or over Dan Boyle.
But both of those guys were on the right side, and I told you Keith is the left shot. If I wasn't sticking to that, yes, he'd be in.
All right.
and I would put him in over Boyle.
All right. Okay. All right.
But
You've talked me off the ledge.
Because I stuck with the right shot, left shot.
All right. Okay.
I went with Duncan Keith as the odd one out. But taking out someone who won 3 cups, a Norris Trophy,
2 Norris Trophies,
2 Norris Trophies,
3 gold medals,
and he's coming off my bench for me.
The definition of an Iron Man, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah.
When you play 80 minutes a game, no.
Yeah, that's true too.
Oh no. Anyways.
Oh no. What? Anyway.
He's addressing me like Loki. Very sad. Anyway.
And everyone died. Speaking of dying, I've been dying to go see the new Bruce Willis movie. It's coming out.
And there's a deep drive into left, and that's going to be a home run for Castellanos.
Yes, Castellanos. I'll make it a 4-0 ball game. The other honorable mention D-man that I went with was Dion
Phaneuf. You said his name.
Dion Phaneuf. Yep.
Dion Phaneuf.
Letterkenny. But yeah, Phaneuf, again, somebody who had one of the hardest shots that I've just ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
One of the hardest hitters in the history of the league.
I feel like
there's a game where when Phaneuf was with the Flames, they're playing Minnesota, and at the end of the first period, he's like there's no time left. He's outside the blue line, takes a shot from just outside the blue line, and his slap shot from that far out shattered the glass pane that was.
I remember that game. Goal. I remember that.
Second period, they've switched ends. We had already had a 15-20 minute delay to switch out the glass panels. End of the second period, he's on the ice. He blasts the puck at the net at the other end of the ice, breaks another glass pane behind the net. So they had 2 15 to 20 minute delays to repaint the ice because Phaneuf's slap shot was breaking the glass both times. I had to put him in there. And then, of course, one of my personal favorites, Mr. Darcy Kemper, the milkman.
Interesting.
All-star in 2020, Cup winner in 2022.
Yeah, I know you love him. It's an interesting choice.
It is. And I could have gone with another double D in Devin Dubnyk if I wanted the wild goaltender angle.
Darcy Kemper.
Yeah, I go Kemper.
I would take Kemper on that one.
There were a couple other goaltenders as well that I looked at, but it's the personal touch to.
Who else? I can't think of any right now.
I had him written down earlier, and I kept circling back to Darcy Kemper and had to go with Darcy Kemper. So to recap the full team here, Andrechuk, Gilmore, and Cicerelli on forward 1. F2, Daniel Sedin, Howardchuk, and Alfredson. Third line, Heatley, Savard, and Dave Taylor. Fourth line, Derek Bugard, Daryl Sittler, Dave Christian. Honorable mentions, Doug Waite, Danny Briere, Dale Hunter, and David Krejci. Then on defense, Dennis Potvin and Drew Doughty. Doug Wilson, Dan Boyle, Doug Harvey, Dustin Byfuglien, with Dominic Hasek and Dom Beaupre between the pipes. Honorable mentions, Duncan Keith, Dion Phaneuf, and Darcy Kemper.
I also realized that I didn't actually read through my summary like that. I should probably do that real quick.
Your summary? I thought you did.
No, we just showed.
But yeah, we'll put that back up here.
Yeah, so just because Dan did it that way, I'll do it the same way. Team J, one more time. First line is Jamie Benn, Joe Sakic, Yari Curry. Second line, Johnny Gaudreau, Jean Beliveau, and Jaromir Jagr. Third line, Jason Robertson, Jonathan Taves, and Jerome McGinley. Fourth line, Jason Zucker, Jeremy Roenick, and Jonathan Marchessault. Forward honorable mentions were Jack Eichel, Jeff Carter, Joe Thornton, and Joe Pavelski. Defense, first pairing, Jacques Laperriere and John Carlson. Second line, Jacob Chikrin and Jonas Brodin. And then third pairing, Jack Johnson and Justin Falk, with the goalies being Jonathan Quick and Jacques Plante. The honorable mentions, defense and goalie, were James Patrick, Jeff Bookaboom, and Jake Ottinger.
I think if we go toe-to-toe here, just going at goaltending alone.
Oh, you win.
Well, Dominic Hasek
alone.
Over Quick. But Jacques Plante over Don Beaupre.
Oh, well, yeah.
I think you take the edge there. And then backup goaltenders, Jake Ottinger versus Darcy Kemper.
I think I take that one.
I think you take that one. So the top overall goaltender, clearly Hasek.
Clearly you.
But as a team from a depth standpoint, I think you got the edge. Defensively, Team D kind of ran away with it.
Yeah. Just a little.
Which means it's going to come down to how people view the forwards. So
pretty much, yeah. I mean,
we'll put this up on Twitter here shortly. So we'll have a poll. We'll leave that open. I think, what do you think? 48 hours, 72 hours? What's a good length of time on there?
I like 72 hours. Let's do that.
Okay.
We'll just reshare it a couple times from our own personal pages.
Yeah,
we'll retweet the Pod Snipe Celly one. Yeah.
So yeah, go to Twitter or X, I guess as it is now.
It's Twitter. Shut up.
It's Twitter. I'm never gonna call it X. I'll ironically call it X. It's Twitter. So dumb. But yes, twitter.com @PodSnipe Celly. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a vote. We'll follow back. But yeah, put up your vote for which team is the overall better roster. But Joel, that's it for tonight. That was we went a little longer than what we would normally do, but
who cares? It's the off season.
Yeah, we kind of have the time to do that. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. We had hang on. There we go.
What are you doing?
It's having some technical issues. There, it's popping up. Yeah, thank you to everybody for tuning in, live, commenting throughout the show tonight. Mateo in particular with a ton of comments for us.
As always, we
always appreciate that. We will be back. We are off next week, so we will be back Tuesday the 22nd with our next show. I don't even know what we're going to do for that show yet because that's still the off season.
We'll have more fun for you like this one.
We will be off on the 29th. And then starting in September, we're going to do a division deep dive, one per week, leading up to the start of the NHL regular season, which happens to fall on a Tuesday this year. So we will do our season preview show.
Maybe we should do that on that Monday.
we will do our season preview show the day before the season starts, due Monday, because hockey's coming back. We're not going to say, "Hey, watch us instead of the NHL."
And you think I'm going to miss? You think I'm going to miss the season opener of Connor Bedard? Hell no.
Oh, you know what? Now, actually, yeah, we're guaranteed. We're going to do a 3-hour show. You're going to watch the whole game on a delay.
Have fun doing it by yourself, then.
Yeah, next show is Tuesday, August 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern. Joel, what time is that Central?
7 o'clock Central.
He's Joel. I'm Dan. Enjoy the rest of your night, everybody.
Farewell.